I think it's pretty safe to say that every single episode of Season 3 is pretty divisive, more so than any other episodes of the series. This one is no exception, but it's the one that I get the least. I mean, I understand why some people didn't like Too Many Pinkie Pies, and even to some extent why they didn't like Magic Duel. I wasn't expecting this particular episode to be on anyone's favorites or anything, but I definitely didn't expect so many people to hate this episode. But then again, perhaps hating on Season 3 is the cool thing to do. Let me tell you what I mean. This episode starts with a pan over some photos, showing that Spike gave Pee-wee away. This was actually added in storyboarding because the other writers don't really care about Merryweather's continuity. We find out that Spike is baking a jewel cake, and we also find out why he doesn't ever sing. It seems that Spike can't control himself and is eating gems that he wants to use, and he eventually ends up eating them all. Owlicious helps him realize that. So Spike seems to be having trouble controlling himself. Unlike Spike's failure at domestic abilities, this is a flaw that I can actually buy. Just like I saw Spike as Your Service as a follow-up to Dragon Quest, I see this as a follow-up to Secret of My Excess, where we learned that the more Spike has, the less he can control himself. This episode almost demands that you pay close attention to that episode. Fluttershy arrives at the door and basically says that she's going to be going to the Crystal Empire tomorrow. Yes, this episode is part one of two simultaneous stories, along with Games Ponies Play. I won't hold it against this episode, but I personally believe that Games Ponies Play should have been first. In that episode, we learn why Spike wasn't invited to the Crystal Empire, despite, saving it. And Games Ponies Play ends on a cliffhanger that this episode answers. On another note, the simultaneous stories gimmick is actually kind of pointless here, and I'll elaborate on that at the end. Fluttershy wants Spike to watch Angel, and she offers him a particularly large jewel. And yes, it's totally logical for Spike to watch Angel. Remember, he did it in Dragonshy. Angel isn't happy about being watched over by Spike, which is definitely something I find interesting about this episode. Looking at any other episode, you'd think that Angel kinda hates Fluttershy. In this episode, he seems to be having some kind of separation anxiety. If I could tag his behavior, it's somewhere between the Angel we saw in Putting Her Hoof Down, and the Angel we saw in Hurricane Fluttershy. The jewel gives Spike the idea to watch every pony else's pet, and it's totally clear that gems are the only thing that's important to him. Rarity gives him an incredibly tiny gem, which does come off as a little greedy for our holder of the element of generosity, especially after the events of Secret of My Excess. We also see that the pets don't mesh very well. Oh, by the way, Pinkie doesn't get many lines in this episode, but she really does shine through. The next day, all of the ponies drop their pets off at the library.
You only want to get hit in the head by a flying turtle once. Tortoise!
I'll be sure to put that on my bucket list. We get to see the ponies interact with their pets some, and it definitely is nice. Twilight almost sees through Spike's charade, but is called away too quickly. As soon as she leaves, the library goes out of control. It's quite clear that Spike is going to have his hands full, especially with Angel. He runs off, and Spike goes looking for him. This eventually leads Spike and the other pets to the CMC clubhouse, and Spike finds the CMC fawning over Angel. Then we see that even the other animals don't like him, which is actually very comforting to know. Spike gets an idea. He pawns the pets out to the CMC, but they know that Applejack gave him a jewel to pet sit Winona, and demand one, so he gives Rarity's gem to them. I would deduct a point, but it kinda makes sense since it's the smallest of all the gems. Spike wanders by the CMC clubhouse, and hears some pretty interesting things going on from inside.
Seen Tank's head? Where's his head?
I absolutely love that line. Spike then realizes that pawning them off on the CMC probably wasn't a good idea, since they have absolutely no idea how to watch pets. And the CMC can't give the jewel back because they used it to buy an industrial-sized hair conditioner. Wait, since when are gems money? I know I'm deducting a lot of points, but gems being used as currency in Equestria makes little to no sense. Since Rarity can easily find jewels, they're incredibly common, and Spike kinda eats them. If the smallest gem could buy an industrial-sized hairdresser, then I'm pretty sure Twilight would be homeless by now. Spike takes the pets back, and ends up getting tied to a tree. Then Sakura comes by and essentially tricks Spike into giving up one of his gems and gives it to a pony Girl Scout. The first time I watched this one moment was actually my biggest problem with the episode. But then I realized that Sakura is probably trying to prevent this from happening again. Though I will admit she could have at least saved him from the leash rope. Spike rolls the pets up in a Katamari, and Granny Smith sees him. Spike pays her a jewel to keep her quiet, and you'll notice something really clever. The less jewels that Spike has, the less reluctant he is to give the jewels away. And yes, Spike is getting abused by the animals quite a lot. Do you know what makes it all okay? He actually deserves it. He was planning on making his cake without regards to them. You can't empathize with him when he's acting this way. Yeah, that's kinda the point. Speaking of animals, Angel boards the train in an attempt to get back to Fluttershy. Unfortunately, Spike can't enter with the animals and without tickets or chaperones. And is it just me or does that conductor sound like the one from the Polar Express? Those other chaperones happen to be the CMC. Yes, this is not only a Spike episode, but it's a CMC episode as well. A proposition that seemed doomed to fail, but actually it's coming along quite nicely. Before Spike can get the animals off the train, it gets going towards the Crystal Empire, and the CMC couldn't be more excited. until the animals escape from the train car. They demolish a dessert cart, leaving Spike to give up one of his last 2 jewels. When the train finally gets to the Crystal Empire, the CMC want to go about the town, but Spike prevents them until they start to tickle him. Angel sees Fluttershy, uses Tank to break down the door, and runs off. Angel makes a break for Fluttershy while Spike desperately tries to stop him. In a last-ditch effort, he sacrifices his final gem to unlock a luggage cart. Spike takes Angel back inside the train, and they immediately go into hiding. And the main 6 sit right above their hiding places.
Bummer Spike had to miss out on all this. He would have had fun here.
I'm sure. Angel is about to give away their position until Spike actually gives him the go-ahead. Yeah, Spike actually learned his lesson, which makes all of his asshole behavior earlier kind of okay. He actually learned his lesson, and he learned it himself. Also, that's part of what makes some of the abuse to him earlier okay as well, because he was refusing to learn his lesson. Spike's rumbling stomach is about to give them away, but as a sign of forgiveness, Angel races the last gem and actually feeds Spike with it, stopping the rumbling. But that doesn't stop Spike from eating his last gem due to his lack of control. Even though he did learn his lesson, he still kinda deserved that. Just like Sleepless and Ponyville got everything right where Look Before You Sleep got everything wrong, I think that Just for Sidekicks got everything right where May the Best Pet Win got everything wrong. Yeah, I'm still on that. Corey Powell's writing style is actually very similar to Charlotte Fullerton's, except, she actually puts effort into what she does and turns out quality. Both of the episodes star a character who is incredibly neglectful to animals, but in this episode, Spike sees them as an obstacle to overcome, or ignore. And May the Best Pet Win, Rainbow Dash wanted to have a pet, just to have a pet. Both of them were put in the wrong, but this episode actually stayed with it till the end. It didn't just spout one sentence at me and thought it would be good enough. No, the episode repeatedly proved that Spike was in the wrong. From what I can gather, the character abuse to Spike is what makes this episode so divisive. But like I said before, he actually deserved it. He was trying to ignore the animals, which put them on a moral high ground. The CMC were also on the moral high ground as well, by actually having some intent on taking care of the animals, even though they weren't very good at it. Now let's take a look at the gimmick that this episode tried to use, intertwining 2 episodes together. This gimmick is usually used to expand on giving more information on a plot we might find interesting, or to see a story from another point of view. It just comes off as experimental here. The staff doing it to prove they can. Sort of like the vibe I got from the CG Timberwolves. Do you know what episode could have been helped with this, provided it was done with tact? Yeah, that's right, the Mysterious Mare-to-Well. If we saw that episode completely from the point of view of the rest of the main 5, and it showed us that they were actually conflicted in humiliating Rainbow, it might actually redeem that episode. With how many of the main 6 make cameos at random times, it could create quite an interesting plotline. Just a thought.